Hey, what is up, y'all? It's Sonia,
It's Genevieve.
And Teresa.
bringing you fresh and zesty content for your education and enjoyment.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about MBTI with our resident expert, Jenna. So, Jenna, what the heck is MBTI?
MBTI is a personality test. And when you think of a personality test, probably the first one that comes to mind is like zodiac symbols and everything. And that's cool and all, and I think they're neat. But zodiac goes off of one thing, and that is your birthday, which doesn't actually tell you a whole lot about your personality on like a closer level kind of thing. MBTI is a personality test that will tell you more about your personality in terms of you and what it analyzes from a test you can take, which we will link down below if you're interested. It is a link called Sacanorva, is the test that we use, and is one of the ones that I've taken multiple, and I think it's one of the best ones out there. So, yeah.
Okay, what does MBTI stand for?
To actually talk about this, I think MBTI is actually, it's the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is what it stands for. And by a mother and daughter pair named Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers, based a lot of the theories and psychology from a very popular psychiatrist, Carl Jung. And they created this just based on just the principles of like, its purpose being to create a way to type people into what is currently 16 personality types with a ranging combination of letters to kind of help tell how that person perceives the world. The main basis for like MBTI is just how you perceive the world, what you perceive it by doing, and like then how you judge it. It's a system of perceiving and judging, basically. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So before we started, I had both of you actually take this test that I said that we will link down below, the Sacanorva one, just to kind of see like what your guys' personality types are. And I'm going to give a brief summary that I found on one site that I think, again, all of the sites I'm quoting from will be linked down below, trust me. But this is one that I think does a great job of summarizing very quickly just what each of your types' personality is. And then I will quickly list like some other people that have your types, just so you kind of can see where you lie, or at least how you ranked in this test, kind of thing. So Sonia, you first. You were scored as an ENTP. And I'm just going to say this off the bat, I'm not explaining what these letters mean now, but I will get into it later. Because what most people think they mean is not the actual basis of how it works. And I think it's better if I explain how it works while explaining what it means. So anyway, Sonia is an ENTP, which from this site, quote, creative, resourceful, and intelligently quick, good at broad range of things, enjoy debating issues, and may be into one-upmanship. They get very excited about new ideas and projects, but may neglect the more routine aspects of life, generally outspoken and assertive. They enjoy people and are stimulating company, excellent ability to understand concepts and apply logic to situations. So, Sonia, does that kind of sound like you? You could be completely honest here.
Yeah, like, okay. It kind of depends on the day, because most of the time I do like talking to people, but then there are some days where it's just I need to be by myself and just like do my own little thing in my own little bubble, but I kind of get that. I just don't feel like it's completely true. And I get that the test is not supposed to be like, this is definitely who you are 100% of the time, because I know tests don't usually work like that. But I like to think of myself as what this test said I was.
Thank you, Sonia. Sorry, my mic was muted. But that is definitely something that I forgot to mention at the beginning that I should mention now, because it is very important. I want to give a huge disclaimer that this is a personality test, but it's not your personality fully. It will never be exactly who you are. You should not take this as a guide on how to live your life, but instead you could use it as a tool to kind of interpret who you might be and use that to help you become who you want to be. So I think it's definitely cool to be able to try and understand who you are by using this, but also use it to, again, make yourself into who you want to be. It's not going to be exactly who you are, but it should be pretty close. And that thing about you also needing your load time, I agree completely. I feel like each and every one of us needs it. Oh, and to go along with that, here are some famous other ENTPs. I was gonna do fictional characters, but it's really hard to type characters, especially in terms of like they weren't real people. So it's much harder. But you can definitely look that up as well. Just fictional characters and then your type if you're interested in that. But some other ENTPs, for example, are Socrates, Leonardo da Vinci, Franklin, and Steve Wozniak, which is another one of the founders of Apple. And so, yeah, do you want to comment on that?
I mean, I'll take that. I like that. I like how Socrates is on there because I'm trying to get into philosophy. Like, I like learning about the different types of philosophy out there and the different philosophers. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Thanks.
Okay, we will get, again, more into what each of those letters means in a little bit. But next is Teresa, who I believe the first time she placed my type, which is INTJ, but this time ISTJ, which I kind of agree with a little bit more, but let me know what you think. This is the little summary that I found. Quote, serious and quiet, interested in security and peaceful living, extremely thorough, responsible, and dependable. Well-developed powers of concentration, usually interested in supporting and promoting traditions and establishments. Well-organized and hardworking, they work steadily towards identified goals. They can usually accomplish any task once they have set their mind to it.
Yeah, I don't. Sounds pretty similar to me. I don't know. It's just like every other because I've taken like different tests that also the whole 16 personality types, but I don't know. They always place me at INTJ, so I don't know. But also, quick question. So the test that you had us all take, we have like 3 different results. With like there was the Grant function type, the Myers function type, and then the Myers-Briggs type. Would you mind like explaining differences? Because I know at least for me, I got different types when concerning Grant, Myers, and Myers-Briggs. So
yes, this is definitely, I think almost everybody got a different result for each of these. And basically, it's just saying that it scores it in 3 different ways and gives you all 3 of those. The first one is going completely off of the cognitive functions, which again, I will get into in just a little bit. The second way is using the original model that both of the 2 people that came up with it, Myers and Briggs, that original model is what they used to score the second one. So the second one I saw you had an INTJ. So if they were to score you in their original test, you'd be an INTJ. And then the last one, which I think is the most accurate, which is why I'm going off of it, is they're taking both the original and scoring it next to the cognitive functions, which gives the new like Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is the actual MBTI type. So yes, and that's the thing, is you might get a different type, but you just kind of have to, if you want to find your true type, you kind of have to read more about it, or just there's tests that exist out there being like between 2 specific types, trying to find the differences between those and see which one you're more like. So that's the thing, is like, if it's going more off the cognitive functions, I think by looking by yours, that's why it scored you as an ISTJ overall. So again, I'm about to talk about those in just a sec, but yes, it will sometimes differs. I know one test I took gave me INTP instead of INTJ, and that's just, again, I think I took another test being like, okay, well, I want to decide this for sure. Am I INTP or am I INTJ? Because they're different, slightly, but they have similarities as well. And that similarity overlap is where it's cool to see where people overlap in terms of that as well. But again, it's just research on your own, just deciding which one you think you fit more into, and then kind of declaring that as your type. But again, only if you want to put in the work to do that.
cool. Another side note, I'm sorry, lots of questions, but the test that you had us take, for me at least, some of the letters are kind of faded, so like the S and the J are kind of faded, so mind explaining?
Yes, I am going to dive into the cognitive functions and then loop back around to that, is what I think that means. So, yeah, because I'll explain it for both of yours when we get there. I'm going to use mine as a basis for explaining the cognitive functions, just because I know mine the best, but then I will give an analysis of both of yours as well. So, most people, when they see MBTI, like the letters, it tells you what each of those means, but it doesn't tell you how each of those actually relates to what they're supposed to be. So, for example, mine is an INTJ. The I stands for introvert, the N for intuitive, the T for thinking, and the J for judging. But that isn't actually how that correlates. See, because I'm an I instead of an E, because I'm an introvert instead of an extrovert, but the way that relates is different. It's all based on the cognitive functions. And these functions, I would say, if you would like to visualize this a little bit better, just either think about it this way or just draw it on a piece of paper real quick. You can have just basically two columns. You have your perceiving functions and you have your judging functions. Because again, when it comes back to it, MBTI is based on how you perceive the world and then how you judge it based on what you perceived. And so there are 4 functions that everybody has, and it's just how they rank those functions. So the perceiving functions are intuition and sensing, and the judging functions are feeling and thinking. And so how that stacks is going to be different for everybody. On top of those 4, each of those could be perceived as introverted or extroverted. Meaning, do I do this internally or do I show this externally kind of thing? So basically, that first letter, that I or that E, Teresa and I are both I's and Sonya's an E, is how that first one is shown. So Teresa and I do that internally, whereas Sonya does it externally kind of thing. So my first function as an INTJ is introverted intuition, meaning that internally, the thing I value the most is perceiving things internally, intuition, basically. And it's kind of hard to explain how that stack works, because that's the thing, is your 4 functions are in a stack. You're going to have your dominant function, as they call it, which is basically what is above everything else, what you value. You have your auxiliary, which is another skill you have, basically, but not as strong as your dominant. Your tertiary, which is still good, and then you have your, what's it called? Your 4th function. And that one is the one that normally us as people have to work on, because that is what is kind of lacking almost.
Go back on what you mean by the last part where that person is lacking that certain trait?
Yes, I can. So again, as I'm talking about these 4 functions, they're in the stack, right? You're going to have ones that aren't as strong as others. So the primary function is the one at the top. That's the one that, again, you value about all others. Your auxiliary, your tertiary, and then your inferior, as they call it, kind of thing. Your inferior one is the one that, in times of stress is strongly connected, but, otherwise... Oh, here, I have a nice little chart that I will read from you. I will quote this as well. It's from personalityclub.com. Your dominant function, this is the way you see the world and learn about it. Your auxiliary function, which makes decisions about the world and determines what's most important to you. Your tertiary function, an underdeveloped part of your personality, which makes you aware of the emotional states of the people around you. And then your inferior function, which usually manifests in times of stress and is strongly connected to the past as a determiner of the value of the present. So that is kind of how they set up. But as long as you know that your dominant function is what mainly is your drive, all the way down to your inferior function, which is normally the one that you only go to when you're kind of not working at your best capacity, or you just kind of need to work on that one, basically.
Oh, I think I get it now. All right, cool.
Okay. And from there, based on your 4 letters, that will tell you what your function stack is. So again, as I mentioned before, the I or the E, the first letter, is going to be how you perceive that first one. So first, if your letter is an E, you're going to show that externally as your dominant function. Versus if that letter is an I, you're going to show that internally, and it's going to be something that you take in internally for that first function. The second and third letter is going to be what your first and second function stack are. So me as an INTJ, since the second and third letter is N and T, my dominant function is intuitive, which is intuition, which is again N, and my second function is thinking. What they're going to do is the I and the E for each of these is going to alternate. So being that I'm an INTJ, my first one is going to be introverted. My next is extroverted. My third is introverted, and my last is extroverted. So if I were to do Teresa, who is an ISTJ, her dominant function would be introverted, because it's an I, sensing, which is the S, and then her next would be extroverted, because it's the alternate of the introverted, thinking, because she's ISTJ. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I'm still a little hung up about the whole alternate and how they relate. I get the letters, but it's the relationship that kind of like tripped me up.
That's fair. What you can do is if you just look up MBTI function stack, it'll show you the function stack for every type, and you can just see that it's going to alternate for every single one. If your dominant is introverted, your secondary is going to be extroverted, because again, it's just that internal versus external understanding. And it's going to do that all the way down. But by knowing that, if your dominant is introverted, your last one, your inferior, is going to be extroverted. So, for example, I'm an INTJ. And if you go back to this chart where I said, like, you have your perceiving functions and your judging functions, your inferior function is going to be the opposite of your dominant function, but it's going to be the same, like, perceiving or judging. So since my dominant function is introverted intuition, which is introverted and a perceiving function, my inferior is going to be extroverted, which is the opposite of introverted, but the other perceiving function. So since mine is intuition, my inferior is sensing. So my last function is extroverted sensing. It's kind of crazy how it works, but once you know your functions, it's cool to be able to see how that ties in. And so if you were to look up, like, your type and then your dominant functions, it'll tell you how each of these plays in, and that's really what can help you grow as a person, kind of thing. It's really concerning to try and tell you this over in audio instead of being able to show you, but you guys can figure it out, I believe.
Yeah, guys, go, like, down in the description, we'll, like, have a chart, because look at the chart. It makes a lot more sense with the chart right in front of you, but yeah.
Yes, I will link a lot of different sources. I will label them as well, what is what, and how that all relates, because there are sites here that will tell you just what all of your functions stack together, what's your letters, INTJ, ENTP, what that means in total. And then what really is nice is when it breaks it down and tells you what each of those means, what your functions mean separately, and how that they build on each other. So yeah, it'll definitely help if you look up this chart, because visuals are so nice, and honestly, that's what really helps send this home. Do you guys kind of understand how that works now, though, these cognitive functions?
Yeah, I get it. Like, if you're strong, if your first letter is E, then the thing you're going to be not lacking in, but the last part is going to be because introverted is opposite of extroverted. And that kind of makes sense. Like, if you're good at doing things externally, like communicating and realizing other people's emotions, it makes sense how you're not as great as doing that when you're doing it internally.
Yes, basically. I love it. It's a complex topic, but I think it's really cool to be able to just assess it and analyze it. And so this brings us to the last letter, the J or the P, the judging or the perceiving. Again, they all mean something different than just their base word value. Like I said, the first letter is what your first dominant function is going to be. Your next two letters are your first two functions, what those actually are. And then your last one is, it has a little twist to it, especially for introverts, so try to stick with me here. Your last letter, that judging or that perceiving, is what you dominantly, like, just extrovertly show. So if you have extrovert as your first letter, that if you have a P or a J, that's going to be what you show first. So since Sonia is an ENTP, that means that her first function is going to be perceiving. It's going to be, which is right, because hers is an intuition. But it's different for introverts, because that's not what they extrovertly show, right? So, since I'm an INTJ, I introvertedly show intuition, which is perceiving, but my letter's a J, and that's because my next one, my extrovertedly, what I show first to other people is judging, because that'd be extroverted thinking, which is a judging. So it's based on what you extrovertedly show first, kind of thing. And that's what that last letter means. It's kind of weird, but it's cool how it ties in to everything else. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I know that was a lot, and again, I would recommend anybody who's interested more in this to look at the sources, because that will help explain more in depth. There's a lot going on, and a lot to just talk about without visuals here. But again, if you just look up what your type is and then those cognitive functions, it helps break it down, and knowing how that relates, you don't need to know that in a sense of why each of those letters is what it is, but it helps understand that what your letters say isn't what they mean, kind of thing. As long as you know your stack. I think of it like this. They normally put the letter of the thing and then the I or the E after it. So as an INTJ, my stack is N, T, F, C, which is introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, and then extroverted sensing. So that's how I think of it. But again, it's going to be different for everybody. And just knowing your type and your stack, I learned a lot from it, and I've tried to grow as a person from it as well. Do either of you have any thoughts on this, or how you might be able to use this, or again, just general thoughts?
I'm still a little hung up on like the fuzzy, like the faint letters. Some letters are faint and some are not. Would you mind explaining why is that?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to go over that. So, it says that Sonia on her test, let me pull this up, was an ISTJ for the Myers-Briggs type. But the letters I and T were much more refined, and then the S and J were duller. So basically that's saying that you have a strong internal like sense, but you have a really strong auxiliary function as well, right? So that's the thing, is everybody's different. Each one of your type, like Sonia's an ENTP, there's going to be some ENTPs that have a stronger internal sense than others, or some that have a really strong dominant type, but then might be lacking in the others. Or like what I was just talking about, you try to work on strengthening your like inferior type or inferior function. Some people have a strong inferior function, and how that relates to that is how you really find out how you fit in this, because that's the thing, is these 16 types are not going to describe everybody, but these functions and how your functions, if you can figure out how strong or which ones you need to work on or which ones are kind of weak, will help kind of tell you what you're kind of lacking in terms of skill. So if I look at Sonia's, her N is really bright compared to her other letters, which are kind of dull, saying that she has a very, very strong extroverted intuition as a dominant function. And she might be lacking in the other three, you know? Just from that, that's what I can kind of view. I know personally, I believe that I have a really strong dominant and then sort of somewhat strong tertiary, but my second and my auxiliary or my inferior functions, and especially my inferior function, I'm really weak with. So that's just something that I know I'm trying to work on. And that's kind of how it, again, it all relates to, not these personality types won't describe everybody, but kind of breaking down what's your weak in terms of these cognitive functions will. Does that make more sense?
Is there, like, any case where you were, I guess, a little bit in between? Like, if you were either or S and N and J and P. Are there cases like that?
Yes, that's the thing, is not everybody, again, will fit exactly into each of these. And I know that I'm personally a pretty strong INTJ, but I have some links, again, to INTP, which is why I took that one test being like, hey, can I just see the difference between these two and see which one I fall more into to try and find out which one was more me. But again, if you have the reason I'm between INTJ and INTP is because I'm also more leaning towards that thinking instead of that intuition as my dominant function. Even though intuition is my strong one, I'm close in terms of which one is first, which would again change whether I'm a T or a J or a P. And so if you were between ISTJ and INTJ, that's, again, you're perceiving how you perceive it is very close to each other. So whether it's intuition or sensing in terms of your intuition, not intuition, your introverted, how you perceive that, is that line is kind of blurred where it wouldn't be for some other people. So that is why you kind of end up with, again, these cognitive functions kind of help fill in the gaps where the regular INTJ or ISTJ borders are kind of blurred.
I just think, like, in general, this is pretty cool to think about because there's so much involved and so much to research and think about. Because like you said before, like, the letters don't tell you, like, just what's going on from the letters. Like, you have to kind of look at the cognitive functions and the stuff behind those letters to explain what's going on. And I like this test because it has a lot more depth involved, as you've clearly explained.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I feel like whenever I first talk to somebody about what's going on with this test, and I'm like, oh, okay, this test says that you are an ESFP. But when I tell them, oh, when I tell them what the letters mean in terms of, like, it means extroverted, it means sensing, it means feeling, they're like, oh, but I'm definitely more of an introvert kind of thing. Well, yes, you might be, but you extrovertedly sense things, and you present, like, a sensing as your dominant function to other people kind of thing. And that's the thing, is I feel like people be like, oh, well, I'm an ambivert kind of thing. You can be. I don't think that is at all related to MBTI, though. Even though they use those words, that's not what they mean. And trying to explain that without going in depth with it is hard, and why people might not understand where they fit in terms of it, or might not agree with a certain letter, maybe because it's not true, or maybe because they don't truly understand the meaning behind it. And that's another thing about the MBTI test. You can go into these cognitive functions, but I personally think it's cool to understand what they mean. But if you just want to look at these cool little tests and be like, oh, this little post on Instagram shows the MBTI types as plants. Which one am I? Sure. Oh, it says I'm an ivy plant. That's cool. You know, it's up for interpretation. You can use it how you want. If you want to use it for self-improvement, if you want to use it to find other people like you, I know that's another cool thing, is you can kind of understand a lot about a person from these 4 letters. And I think that's cool to know as well. It helps me understand other people, though, I gotta say.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is that you can take it as seriously or not as seriously as you want. So, yeah. But, I don't know. Personalities are kind of fluid, in my opinion. What you are now might not be who you were 5 or 6 years ago, and then later. So, yeah. But I like to think that, I don't know, this is a cool snapshot of who we are now. Maybe we'll change, or maybe we won't. Who knows?
Yes, and that's another thing that I like about this one, is that I like to take the test every once in a while when it's been a couple years and take it again. See, maybe I might have changed. Right now, I'm almost positive that I'm still an INTJ, but years from now, that might be completely different, you know? And I feel like at heart, we still have a lot of the same principles and beliefs kind of thing. But again, this test is all about how you perceive the world and how you judge it based on that, which is definitely something that can change over time. Which again, I love about it because it will take that information. Whereas something like Zodiac is cool, but it's saying that because I was born in February, for instance, I'm more of a go-getter type of person. And that might be true for a lot of people. But in terms of it, like, I feel like this one's just more accurate in terms of how it can perceive that fluidity you were talking about. I do have one more thing just to mention briefly that I've looked into recently. They're called basically your shadow functions. And it's just the opposite of what yours are. So if your first one is extroverted, instead it would be introverted. And these shadow functions are just a way to, quote from Personality Club again, it will open up new paths of development and help you understand what you do and why on a much deeper level. And it helps you understand, like, what the far reaches of your personality kind of look like and how you can use those to help you instead of to hinder you. So that's just another way that I wanted to mention briefly that you can use if you're interested. And yeah, that's about all I got. So yeah, I hope you guys at least learned a little bit from it. I think it's also cool to see like other people that have your type and to again experience that fluidity and to truly find your own type. Again, one test is not going to be enough, but also going back to that disclaimer that it isn't going to be exactly what you think it is, or it's not going to be your personality entirely. And making sure that you know that this test isn't you, but it's a tool you can use to help find who you want to be, I think is the true beauty here.
That's cool. Thank you for explaining this with us. We know you're really passionate about this subject, and so we were happy to let you talk about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because, yay! So thank you to our resident experts, and I guess having us be her little guinea pigs and test it out. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you guys for listening to me ramble, because this isn't a topic I get to talk about often, but is one I think is super cool and I would like more people to look into if they had a chance. So, if you're interested, definitely look at the links below. They'll tell you all you need to know for now. But I think it's just a really cool community of people as well that you can go check out. So, yes, thank you for being my guinea pigs. I really appreciate it.
On that note, thank you for listening, and don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for more content. Go take the quiz down below and let us know your MBTI type. Now, for the 4 of you who have been consistently watching our content, we wanted to let you guys know that this Thursday's episode will be our final episode before we take a quick hiatus to refresh and prepare for some new awesome content and ideas for the future.
Yep, we want to take a break, but hopefully it won't be too long. We've just got more stuff that's happening in our lives with new stepping stones to try and jump over. So that should be fun. Be sure to let us know what other new ideas or topics that you want to see on the show, and thank you for hanging out with us, and be on the lookout for our next episode.